Half a year ago, this patch of ground in Nezahualcóyotl, Mexico, was exactly the sort of lifeless, salt-ruined earth that was never supposed to support anything again. Today, it's a thick young forest, and that turnaround comes with a name, a date, and a street address. The address? A 500 square meter lot, about the footprint of a basketball court, sitting on the campus of the Universidad Tecnológica de Nezahualcóyotl, out on the eastern rim of Mexico City. The date? The opening week of May 2025, when a crew supported by Tsugi, Mexico's Floresta, and Chile's Symbiotica pushed more than 1,500 trees from 25 native species into that soil. The technique? Something known as the Miyawaki method, a Japanese restoration approach that virtually no one in Mexico had attempted at this size before. By November 2025, that identical ground was running cooler than the pavement surrounding it, thickening with birdsong, and, against steep odds, drawing in monarch butterflies. That's the whole story on the surface. What almost nobody knows is how any of it happened, because reaching this point means going back to a lake that no longer appears on any map, a 15th century king whose name this city still wears, and a Japanese botanist who spotted something inside a 1,000-year-old shrine grove that permanently changed how humans grow trees. This ground was once beneath water. Lake Texcoco filled this valley, and it was drained across 4 centuries, first by the Spanish crown, later by Mexico's own government. By 1917, President Venustiano Carranza ordered the dried lake bed measured out and sold, 60 pesos per hectare to whoever wanted a piece. Families with nowhere else to turn began showing up in the 1940s, raising homes on salt flats too barren even for crops. The municipality wasn't officially created until April 23, 1963, named for Nezahualcóyotl, the Acolhua poet king of Texcoco, a name that in Nahuatl translates as the fasting coyote. For decades afterward, this land swallowed whatever the rest of the valley refused. Dumps, factory runoff, garbage by the ton, until the earth itself changed, pressed so tight it quit taking in water, salted so deep that roots surrendered before they got going. Satellite images now show barely a break in the gray. Over 60% of the surface is concrete. Concrete soaks up heat all day and releases it all night, the urban heat island effect. During the dry months, pavement here routinely drives air temperatures past 35 degrees Celsius. And when rain finally arrives, that same hardened crust can't take in a single drop, so water runs sideways instead, hauling trash down the streets. People living here have under 3 square meters of green space apiece. The World Health Organization advises 9. No one was arriving to solve that. So a small local team decided to attempt something unfamiliar. This wasn't the first effort to green Nezahualcóyotl, and nearly all the earlier ones had already collapsed. Standard urban tree planting follows an easy recipe. Dig a pit, set in a sapling, fill it back, leave. That works in loose, healthy soil. It fails here. Forestry research has followed planting groups in harsh urban soil where yearly losses climb above 60%. Roots striking packed earth just inches down and quitting. Across Neza's forgotten lots, crews planted and buried saplings for years with hardly any record kept. The trees themselves were never the real issue. The earth beneath them was contaminated, compressed solid, drained of the microbial life every forest depends on. Give someone the finest sapling in the country, sink it into dead soil, and it fades slowly, then completely, and nobody bothers asking why. That was the settled belief in 2025. This ground couldn't be repaired without money and time nobody here possessed. That's the assumption a small team on this campus set out to challenge, using an idea whose origins lie not in Mexico, but in a shrine forest in Japan, half a century earlier. In the 1970s, Japan was reshaping itself into an industrial giant, and its woodlands were footing the bill. A botanist named Akira Miyawaki, based at Yokohama National University, kept catching something that broke the pattern. Surrounding old Shinto shrines, small, untouched scraps of land, sometimes only a few meters across, the original native trees were still there, thick and gnarled, in cities that had flattened everything else. Miyawaki constructed a theory from that observation. Potential natural vegetation. The notion that every stretch of land holds a particular community of native species that would establish itself naturally, stacked from ground cover to canopy, if simply granted the density and the opportunity. Plant that precise mix tightly enough, and you aren't landscaping. You're rebooting a forest's operating system. His first genuine trial came from an improbable backer, Toyota and Mitsubishi, who allowed him to ring their factories with dense, native green belts. They succeeded, and kept succeeding decades past the point where standard landscaping would have been ripped out. The concept might have remained a Japanese oddity had it not found a young engineer in India, Shubhendu Sharma. Sharma worked at a Toyota facility, watched a Miyawaki forest rise there, and left his career to build them full-time. His organization, Aforest, compressed the process down to plots no bigger than a parking space, and showed it could flourish in Bangalore and Mumbai. From there, it spread worldwide. In 2019, Belgian strategist Elise van Middelum launched Sugi to finance pocket forests city by city. By the time its network arrived in Latin America, Sembrando Vida in Chile had already established dozens of these forests around Santiago, Concepcion, and Valparaiso, learning how to sustain the method in parched, salt-loaded soil. That know-how was precisely what Mexico required next. Dr. Mara Edith Nava Mendez, a researcher at UTN, and Outreach Secretary Leticia Perez Meneses, spent months linking their campus to Sugi, Forestalis, and Sembrando Vida. Forestalis' Andrea Guzman Parra, who describes this as climate justice rather than mere restoration, selected which native species could endure a dried lakebed turned salt flat. Chilean forester Nicolas Corral Toro flew in to direct the planting itself. By the time planting day came, everything was set. Nobody involved was fully convinced it would work. Nowhere in Mexico had this been tested at this scale on soil this ruined. If this is the kind of history nobody taught you in school, subscribe now. Because what this team actually did to the earth here looks nothing like an ordinary tree planting project. Here's where a Miyawaki forest breaks from the norm, starting at the ground, literally. Before one seedling arrived, excavators stripped out Nezahualcoyotl's dead topsoil to a depth of almost a meter. Trucks brought in forest soil, compost, rice husks, farm waste, anything that could restore the microbial life the land had lost. What went back in wasn't dirt anymore. It was an engineered living substrate, porous enough to drink in water the old ground never could. Then came the planting, and this is where it stops resembling anything familiar. Skip the rows. Skip the spacing. Volunteers were instructed to get them in tight enough to fight each other for light. Rather than neat lines, workers crammed in 3 to 5 plants per square meter, 25 native species mixed together. Oaks, Montezuma cypress, sage, agave, nopal cactus, coral trees, milkweed, organized into 4 tiers from canopy down to ground cover, the way an actual forest stacks itself. Planted at that spacing, something automatic switches on. Every seedling battles its neighbors for identical sunlight. Blocked from spreading sideways, each one drives straight upward instead, sprinting toward the light. Competition, not coddling, generates the speed. And that same rivalry eventually braids root systems together underground, so no single tree in a Miyawaki forest truly stands by itself. Left untouched, a stripped lot like this might need 200 years to turn back into forest, assuming it ever did. Planted densely and prepared properly, a Miyawaki forest hits self-sufficiency within 2 to 3 years. No more irrigation, no more weeding, and a thickness a conventional forest would need 20 to 30 years to reach. Speed like that has never been free, and the cost nearly killed the project before it launched. Miyawaki forests are expensive. Tearing out a meter of dead soil and repacking it with engineered substrate runs roughly 5 times the price of standard planting, money the university simply didn't have sitting around. Why not just lay down grass and be done, was the question more than one skeptic raised on hearing the figure. Without foreign foundations and volunteers closing that gap, none of this happens. Then there was water. Through its first 2 to 3 years, a Miyawaki forest requires reliable irrigation, and Neza already sits in a region running short on it. Miss that window and the whole planting can fold before roots reach independence. There was a quieter obstacle too: supply. Most commercial nurseries in Mexico grow what moves, decorative non-native species, not what this project called for. Tracking down the right seedlings took months that never appear in the final footage. Nothing about it was certain. Scientists studying Miyawaki forests still argue the method needs far more long-term data before anyone declares it a lasting answer for a city this size. So when the final seedling went in during early May 2025, this project had exactly one task remaining: survive 6 months. The findings came back that November, and they caught even the people running it off guard. Almost everything placed in that soil in May was still alive and visibly flourishing, matching the survival rates of 90% or more recorded by Miyawaki forests elsewhere. Compare that with conventional planting in similarly wrecked soil, which can lose more than half its trees over the same stretch. Beneath the young canopy, researchers logged noticeably cooler air than the exposed pavement close by, in line with mature Miyawaki forests elsewhere, where the gap, once fully grown, can hit 10 to 15 degrees Celsius against surrounding concrete. Bird calls came back to a site that previously had none. So did pollinating insects. Among the species planted was milkweed, Asclepias, the only plant on Earth that monarch caterpillars can feed on. Nobody could promise a monarch would locate 500 square meters of green wrapped in 1 million people in concrete. But the plant was sitting there now, waiting in a city its migration was never meant to reach. Scientists examining Miyawaki forests elsewhere have recorded biodiversity as much as 18 times higher than conventional plantations, and carbon uptake up to 30 times quicker. This modest plot, planted at that density, was already acting less like a garden and more like a living air filter dropped into a heat island. The team isn't halting at 500 square meters. Encouraged by these numbers, they're pushing into the vacant land-ringing campus, part of a larger drive to spread 100 pocket forests through the Valley of Mexico's hottest pockets by 2030. Planners have begun calling the water concept a sponge city, engineered to soak up water and heat instead of merely surviving them. If land this lifeless, this salted, this buried under decades of refuse can return in 6 months, it's worth wondering what else we've been assured is past rescuing. Like, subscribe, and pass this along to the one friend who still believes decades of damage can never be reversed. Because this won't be the last forest this channel shows you rising, where nothing was ever supposed to grow again.